Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hand, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. James 4, verse 7 through 8. Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back to the broadcast. I'm Sean, your host. The website is www.scriptureandprophecy.com. And by the way, if you're being blessed by this podcast and you enjoy it and you want to support it and help it to move forward in the future, you can go to patreon.com/truthfed, patreon.com/truthfed. You can subscribe at any dollar amount, and that's how we take care of business here. So if you're interested in doing that, you can, but the podcast obviously completely free to all. Every portion, nothing is held back from anyone. But I am looking for some ideas, so I'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. Today, we are finishing our book finishing our study in the ancient book of Jubilees, found with the Dead Sea Scrolls. We're going to be reading chapter 49 and 50. Last week it dealt with it just kind of came full circle back to Moses and talked about the Exodus and how the Israelites, according to the book of Jubilees, or not the Israelites, but the Egyptians who were chasing the Israelites, were washed away into the river as part of judgment for forcing the Hebrews to cast their children into the river. Moses, as an example, was cast into the river. And so God judged that. Very, very interesting, that the judgments were very specific. I've also heard it said that if you study the judgments that were on Egypt, a lot of the judgments had to do with false gods that they worshipped, like the plague of frogs and stuff like that. So very specific judgment. And I think that's very, very interesting. Many also believe that some of the judgments you see in Revelation are kind of a parallel to what's happening in Exodus. And so that's interesting, an interesting comparison as well. But at any rate, we're past that now in the book of Jubilees. And so chapter 49 and 50 are more or less just Moses being commanded to observe the Passover and what the regulations for the Passover are. And then chapter 50 is just laws regarding the Jubilees and the Sabbaths. Very strict laws about obeying the Sabbath, and very strict and guidelines about observing Passover. And so that's what it's going to be about today. Not as interesting as some of the stuff that we've dealt with as we went through this study, but it's part of the book. And we need to do that, so we're going to finish it today. And then hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll start something new, very much leaning towards the book of Enoch. The only thing I haven't decided yet is what version I want to read it out of. We did it out of the Hallelujah Scriptures when we did this study several years ago. And so at this point, I'm either going to read it out of the King James. I have a King James Bible here that has the book of Enoch in it. So it would be in that style. I also have a Bible on the way that I'm going to be reviewing called the Et Sefer. So it's going to be similar to the Hallelujah Scriptures, whereas it puts some of those, what you would call sacred names, back in. And it also happens to include the Dead Sea Scroll books like Enoch. So I'm going to look at it, examine it, review it, compare it with other things, and see what I think, and make a decision based on that. Your feedback down below is certainly appreciated. If you'd like to see it in a more Hebraic style, or if you'd like to see it in more of the Old English style, let me know. But that's what we're leaning towards doing. All right, 5 minutes of rambling. Let's do what we came here to do, shall we? Let's read chapter 49 and 50 and wrap up our study in the ancient book of Jubilees. Verse 1. Remember the commandment which the Lord commanded thee concerning the Passover, that thou shouldest celebrate it in its season, on the 14th of the first month, and thou should kill it before it is evening, and that they should eat it by night on the evening of the 15th, from the ninth, from the time of the setting of the sun. For on this night, the beginning of the festival and the beginning of the joy, ye were eating the Passover in Egypt, when all the powers of Mastema had been let loose to slay all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh to the firstborn of the captive maidservant in the mill, and to the cattle. And this is the sign which the Lord gave them into every house, on the lintels of which they saw the blood of the lamb of the first year. Into that house they should not enter to slay, but should pass by it, that all those be saved that were in the house because of the sign of the blood that was on the lintels. Real quick, and we have to remember and point out that it's the blood of Messiah that covers us, right? That we are able to be passed over for judgment. And I've theorized that in the end there'll be a second Exodus. A new Exodus is really what the end times might look like. And so at some point maybe we can kind of study that out and visit that, but it's the blood, right? It's the blood of the Lamb. And the Passover is a foreshadow of that. And as the book of Jubilees is going to explain, I think we should always be memorializing Passover. Even though Passover has been fulfilled by Messiah, we should be memorializing that and remembering that event and studying. And again, we talk about this when we do our Pesach study, and we'll talk about it again when that comes around next year. But let's move forward here. Verse 4. And the powers of the Lord did everything according to as the Lord commanded them, and they passed by all the children of Israel, and the plague came not upon them to destroy from amongst them any soul, either of cattle or man or dog. And the plague was very grievous in Egypt, and there was no house in Egypt where there was not one dead, and weeping and lamentation. And all Israel was eating the flesh of the paschal lamb, and drinking the wine, and was lauding and blessing and giving thanks to the Lord God of their fathers, and was ready to go forth from under the yoke of Egypt, and from the evil bondage. And remember thou this day all the days of thy life, and observe it from year to year all the days of thy life, once a year, on its day according to all the law thereof, and do not adjourn from day to day, or from month to month. For it is an eternal ordinance, and engraven on the heavenly tables regarding all the children of Israel, that they should observe it every year on this day once a year throughout all their generations. And there is no limit of days, for this is ordained forever. And the man who is free from uncleanliness and doth not come to observe it on occasion of its day, so as to bring an acceptable offering before the Lord, and to eat and to drink before the Lord on the day of this festival, that man who is clean and close at hand will be cut off, because he offered not oblation of the Lord in its appointed season. He will take the guilt upon himself. Let the children of Israel come and observe the Passover on the day of its fixed time, on the 14th day of the first month, between the evenings, from the third part of the day to the third part of the night, for 2 portions of the day are given to the light, and a third part to the evening. That is that which the Lord commanded thee, that thou shouldest observe it between the evenings. And it should not be permissible to slay it during any period of light, but during the period of bordering on the evening. And let them eat at the time of the evening until the third part of the night. And whatsoever is left over of all of its flesh from the third part of the night and onwards, let them burn it with fire. And they shall not cook it with water, nor shall they eat it raw, but roast it on the fire. They shall eat it with diligence. Its head with its inwards thereof, and its feet they shall roast with fire, and not break any bone thereof. For of the children of Israel no bone shall be crushed, For this reason the Lord commanded the children of Israel to observe the Passover on the day of its fixed time. And it shall not break a bone thereof, for it is the festival day, and a day commanded. And there may be no passing over from day to day and month to month, but on the day of its festival let it be observed. And do thou command the children of Israel to observe the Passover throughout their days every year, once a year, on the day of its fixed time. And it will come for a memorial well-pleasing before the Lord, and no plague will come upon them to slay or smite them in that year in which they celebrate the Passover, in its season, in every respect according to his command. And they shall not eat it outside the sanctuary of the Lord, but before the sanctuary of the Lord, and all the people of the congregation of Israel shall celebrate it in its appointed season. And every man who hath come upon this day shall eat it in the sanctuary of your God before the Lord, from 20 years old and upward. For thus it is written and ordained that they should eat in the sanctuary of the Lord. And when the children of Israel came to the land which they are to possess in the land of Canaan, and set up the tabernacle of the Lord in the midst of the land, and of their tribes until the sanctuary of the Lord hath been built in the land, let them come and celebrate the Passover in the midst of the tabernacle of the Lord, and let them slay it before the Lord from year to year. And in the days when the house hath been built in the name of the Lord in the land of their inheritance, they shall go there and slay the Passover in the evening at sunset at the third part of the day. And they will offer its blood on the threshold of the altar, and shall place its fat on the fire which is upon the altar. And he shall eat its flesh roasted with fire in the court of the house which hath been sanctified in the name of the Lord. And they may not celebrate the Passover in their cities, nor in any place, save before the tabernacle of the Lord, or before his house where his name hath dwelt. And they will not go astray from the Lord. And do thou, Moses, command the children of Israel to observe the ordinance of the Passover, as it was commanded unto thee. Declare thou unto them every year and day of its days the festival of unleavened bread, and they should eat unleavened bread 7 days, and that they should observe its festival, and that they bring an oblation every day during those 7 days of the joy before the Lord on the altar of your God. For you celebrated this festival with haste when you went forth from Egypt till you entered into the wilderness of Shur. For on the shore of the sea you completed it. All right, so that's chapter 49, dealing with the regulations of Passover. And now chapter 50 here is the last chapter, 13 verses it looks like, dealing with the laws regarding Jubilees and the Sabbath. So let's take a look at this and finish our study in the book of Jubilees. Chapter 50, verse 1. And after this I made known to thee the days of the Sabbaths in the desert of Sinai, which is between Elim and Sinai. And I told thee of the Sabbaths of the land on Mount Sinai, and I told thee of the Jubilee years in the Sabbath of years. But the year thereof I have not told thee, till ye enter the land which you are to possess. And the land also will keep its Sabbaths while they dwell upon it. And they will know the Jubilee year, whereof I have ordained for thee the year weeks, and the year and the Jubilees. There are 49 Jubilees from the days of Adam until this day, and 1 week in 2 years. And there are yet 40 years to come, distance for learning the commandments of the Lord until they pass over into the land of Canaan, crossing the Jordan to the west. And the Jubilees will pass by until Israel is cleansed from all guilt of fornication, uncleanness, and pollution, and sin, and error, and dwelleth with confidence in the land. And there will be no more a Satan or an evil one, and the land will be clean from that time forevermore. Real quick, I think it's important that we remember that the actual new Israel, the new Jerusalem, like the scriptures talk about how when that really does come for real, you know, that Messiah will be king, that if a man dies at 100 years old, he'll be considered dying young. that peace will flow from that area. And here in Jubilees, it's saying, when this day comes, when the fulfillment of all of it comes, there won't be a Satan anymore, or an evil one anymore. And we've talked about, as we went through the study, that Satan in Hebrew is Hashatan, which means the adversary. So there'll no longer be an adversary. There'll no longer be an evil one to deceive and to draw people away from God. And man, I'm just longing for that day to happen. For New Jerusalem to descend out of the heavens, a Messiah to be here and us to dwell with God, and there to be peace in the world, and no more of the madness that we're seeing nowadays. But it's appointed that that'll happen according to all the scriptures. I just don't think it's going to happen in the manner in which we've all thought for many years. I think when it comes to end-time prophecy, I think many are confused because there's just been a status quo that's been taught for a couple of decades now, and people are sold out to these views, even though they're unbiblical and unscriptural. But at any rate, that's what it's describing here. There'll no more be a Satan or any evil one in the land, and the land will be clean from that time forevermore. Verse 6. And behold, the commandment regarding the Sabbaths, I have written them down for thee, and all the judgments of its laws. 6 days without labor, but on the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it ye shall do no manner of work, ye and your sons and your men servants and your maidservants, and all your cattle, and the sojourner also who is with you. And the man that doeth any work on it shall die. Whosoever decreaseth that day, whoever lieth with his wife, or whoever saith he will do something on it, that he will set out on a journey thereon in regard to any buying or selling, and whosoever draweth water therein, which he had not prepared for himself on the 6th day, and whosoever taketh up any burden to carry it out of his tent or out of his house shall die. You shall do no work whatsoever on the Sabbath day, save that you have prepared for yourselves on the 6th day, so as to eat and drink and rest and keep the Sabbath from all work on that day, and to bless the Lord your God. Real quick, interestingly enough, it's not only is it telling the Israelites not to work on the Sabbath, but not even to lie with their wives. That's not something that's in the canon. This forbidden of sexual intercourse, but that's what it's saying in the book of Jubilees. Just interesting to note. Let's continue. And to bless the Lord your God, who has given you a day of festival, and a holy day, and a day of the holy kingdom for all Israel, is this day among their days forever. For great is the honor which the Lord hath given to Israel, that they should eat and drink and be satisfied on this festival day, and to rest thereon from all labor which belongeth to the labor of the children of men, save burning frankincense and bringing oblations and sacrifices before the Lord for days and for Sabbaths. This work alone shall be done on the Sabbath day in the sanctuary for the Lord your God, that they may atone for Israel with sacrifice continually from day to day for a memorial well-pleasing before the Lord, and that he may receive them always from day to day according as thou hast been commanded. And every man who doeth work thereon, or goeth a journey, or tilleth his farm, whether in his house or another place, and whosoever lighteth a fire, or rideth on any beast, or travelleth by ship on sea, and whosoever striketh or killeth anything, or slaughtereth the beast, or a bird, or whosoever catcheth any animal, or a bird, or a fish, or whosoever fasteth or maketh war on the Sabbath, the man who doeth any of these things on the Sabbath day shall die. So that the children of Israel shall observe the Sabbaths according to the commandments regarding the Sabbaths of the land, as it is written in the tables, which he gave into my hands, that I should write out for thee the laws of the seasons, and the seasons according to the divisions of their days. Herewith is completed the account of the division of days. That, my friends, is the end of the book of Jubilees. And we have read all 50 chapters and completed this study. And I pray that it's been a blessing to many of you. I know that many people have found the podcast as a result of the study in the book of Jubilees. And this is just another reason why we study these things out. People are searching for, what did the Dead Sea Scrolls say? People want answers about this stuff. People want to know about the Apocrypha. Why was it taken out of the King James Bible in the late 1800s, early 1900s? Why is it not there anymore? What did it have to say? People want to know these things. And so we search those things out and study those things out. And to some, that seems like a really weird and fringe thing. But it wasn't weird and fringe to God's people 2,000 years ago. You've got the disciples quoting from these books, which we point out when we go through the studies. They were found with the Dead Sea Scrolls along with the book of Isaiah and all the other canon. So that group of people believed in these books. So again, a lot of it's ignorance and lack of knowledge and lack of understanding about these things, and it's hard to accept that in some levels we've been deceived and duped about some things. And some of it was meant for the last generation. The book of Enoch, and we'll discuss this when we get to it, very clearly says this is not meant for this generation, but for a distant one, right? And lo and behold, the book has become available and now is massively readily available. Whereas before it was hidden. It was only in a few Bibles around the world. The Ethiopic Bible was one of them, as an example, where the book of Enoch was there. So, lots of interesting stuff in regards to this. But I think this work is very, very important. And not only that, people search for the book of Jubilees, they find it, they listen to our studies, and then they go listen to our studies on the Gospels and some of these other things that are more important because they're drawing you near. The whole goal of the podcast, I really had several goals with this. This started off as I've got a couple of minutes. I'm just going to spend 2 minutes wrapping this up. So excuse my rambling. But this podcast started off as a news podcast. If for those of you who've been with me from the beginning, if you remember, it was called Truth Fed, and it was news. End time news, but it really wasn't based on scripture or anything. It was just me ranting about the economy and the things that was going on in government and all of that. And I just felt led one day to change things up. And so we started studying the Bible together. And that led me to spending 2 or 3 years trying to learn Hebrew and studying end-time prophecy. And it's over 5 years, it's morphed into what we have today, which is it's just 100% scriptural based. It's based on drawing people to God. We still cover some news, right? I just hope that the work is going forth in piercing hearts, and I pray to hear on that day, well done, good and faithful servant. I want to end by just asking for a couple of things from you guys, if I may. Prayer, just the direction of the podcast. What to do moving forward. Is there some changes that need to happen? And those are kind of the things I'm praying for, that I would just hear some clarity from God on this matter. And also, if you're interested in supporting the podcast, I wish there was a better way to fund it, other than people donating through PayPal or subscribing through Patreon. But those, as of right now, that's just the only way there is. We don't have books and DVDs and products to push, and I never really want my podcast to have 5 minutes worth of ads every day. That's not what I want. I just want to study the scriptures with all of you. But unfortunately, it takes money, and if we're ever going to get to the place where this is every day, 5 days a week, and better content, better video content, those kinds of things, it takes support. So your support is much needed. Truthfed.com/ patreon.com/truthfed to subscribe monthly at any dollar amount. The Patreon subscriptions have actually declined month over month for several months. And again, it's free for all, so if you can't and you don't want to, that's fine. If you want to, go for it. Let God lead you in that. This is not a church. It's not set up as a CO or whatever it is that the church is set up as. It's an LLC, which I've described and explained several times over the podcast over the years. So it's up to you. If you want to support it, you can. I'm interested in ideas for the Patreon subscribers and the PayPal donators. I was doing Hebrew training videos, but they weren't getting watched very much by the community. And I also don't like the idea that there's some things, there's teachings or there's things available for people who pay, but it's not available to the people who don't, because I just like everything to be available to everyone, because it's about bringing people to Messiah, not about, you know what I mean? Like, that's the priority. So that's the struggle that I have. Well, I don't want to have content that's available for people just because they pay. I don't like things being hidden behind a paywall. I want things to be available to all. So those are kind of some of the things I'm struggling with. It's like, we do need to bring in money. I would like someday to be able to make this my primary focus in life, not just something I get up at 5:45 in the morning to do before I go to work. But at the same time, I don't want teaching and those things to be hidden from those who can't spend money, right? Because God's word is not something to sell. It's something to be shared. And so that's why I use the model that I use, and why I've thought about writing books and stuff, but I just haven't had the time. I'd love to release some commentaries and things like that that are available in a bookstore that we openly talk about on the podcast, so people can still get the content, but then those who want to buy the book. But again, those opportunities are just not available to me because of time and money. So anyway, I feel I've done way too much rambling today. I pray you've been blessed by this study. I hope you're looking forward to the Enoch study. And as soon as I figure out and I pray and I review this other Bible and some other things, we'll figure out when to start that series. I got to create the artwork. There's actually a lot of work involved just to start a series, believe it or not. And just kind of see how we're going to go from there. And then hopefully next week we can get back to our study in the book of Acts that we haven't been on for a few weeks now. So there you go, friends. I hope you have a blessed weekend. Peace and grace be with all of you, and until next time, God bless.